Today's starter spotlight shines on a guy that's got to improve in 2022. We head back to the offensive line for that. And a question to ponder before we get into it later in the show. The most important game on Tennessee's schedule this year. I'll tell you mine. I'll tell you what some of you guys have told me on social. And we'll discuss it all here on a Wednesday Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
A good Wednesday, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Vols, your team every single day. I'm Eric Kane. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. Weekday mornings when you wake up on YouTube and wherever you find your podcast. You can find it at _Kaner on Twitter, at Locked On Vols. And today is going to be a fun one. We're going to talk Javontez Spraggins here in segment one as we continue on with our starter spotlight, working right to left on the offensive line. Josh Ward Wednesday will stop by for segment number two. And then the most important game on Tennessee's football schedule, that's how we'll conclude a show. I'm Eric Kane, the host here of this show. I do radio in Knoxville, Tennessee at 99.1 The Sports Animal. I write for the rival site covering the University of Tennessee. That is volquest.com. So a guy that's got to step up and a guy that's got to play better football in 2022 on the offensive line is going to be Javontez Spraggins. Now, he is solidified. He is a starter, no doubt about it. He came in the class of 2021 and was a really, really nice player for Jeremy Pruitt in that class. Saw a little bit of PT in that COVID-shortened season of 2020. He plays with an anger, plays with an edge, that being Javontez Spraggins. He's not the biggest guy in terms of an offensive lineman, a little bit of short, but nonetheless, he gets the job done, right? He plays with a tenacity that I think is very much valued by a lot of offensive linemen. And so he played a little bit in 2020, is a starter and certainly, has that role. He's the incumbent starter at right guard for the University of Tennessee. And he started every single game last year, right? So he played in 12 games or started 12 games, plus that bowl game, I guess. Or I guess he missed one game due to injury. It says he only played here in 12 games. But nonetheless, and he graded out per Pro Football Focus at 63 on the season. Now, I like to use PFF. I especially like to use PFF when evaluating offensive linemen. Now, again, like I said during the season, and I think a lot of you guys like the Pro Football Focus grades that I bring after the game to this podcast. It's not everything. It doesn't tell the whole story, but the PFF grades do tell something, right? It breaks it down in terms of, how they rep in terms of run blocking and pass blocking and tackling and missed tacklings and open in space and that type of stuff, for pretty much any type of position. So whenever evaluating defenders and offensive linemen specifically, I really like to, go relate and fall back on the Pro Football Focus ranking. So Javontez Spraggins, a 63 grade so far, or for the 2021 season. And remember, guys, the Pro Football Focus grades, I don't have the rubric in front of me, but essentially 60 and below is, considered a below average starter. 60 to 69, I think, is an average starter. 69 or 70 to 74 is good. 74 to, 85 is above average. And then, 85 up to 100 is considered, all-star level. I don't have that in front of me. I think that's kind of, what it is. But nonetheless, you've got Javontez Spraggins, who has played just about at a, an average starter type level per Pro Football Focus. His grade was 63 in 2021. He played in 12 games. He totaled 861 snaps. 472 of those were in pass blocking reps. 389 of those were in run blocking reps. What he did well in was run blocking. He's a much better run blocker than he is a pass protector. And I'll show you why right here. Run blocking, his grade is at 63.2. Pass blocking, his grade is at 56.4. So, some things to climb on and some things to get better on, as the, season progresses or in his career progresses now as he moves up to be a true junior this season. He had some games last season where he really, really struggled in pass blocking categories. Early on against Pittsburgh, graded out at 21.7%. Against Alabama on the road, 32.3%. 47.2% against Florida. What do all those games have in common? Well, those are Tennessee losses, right? He did get better as the season went on. At South Alabama, against South Alabama, 81.5% in terms of pass blocking. Against Purdue in the Music City Bowl, 58.9% pass blocking. But pretty much overall in the season, he was pretty much in that 50 to 60 range. Now, there was another outlier on the schedule that's against Bowling Green. And so against Bowling Green and against South Alabama, those are kind of some outliers. And of course, those were his better graded performances. You look at the run blocking, he was pretty steady all season long, kind of in that 68 to 61 range in terms of pass blocking or run blocking. He did have one really, really good game run blocking against South Carolina. He graded out at 72.9. That was a season high mark for Javontez Spraggins, but overall solid, but there's a whole lot of room for improvement, and the stats reflected, the grades reflected over at Pro Football Focus. He did get better from one season to the next, from 2020 to 2021. In 2020, his overall grade was 53.9 as a true freshman. Keep in mind, still, he only totaled 91 snaps that season. He totaled 861 snaps in 2021, but he went up from a 53.9% to a 63.0% overall in his offensive rankings. Overall for Javontez Spraggins, he comes in as essentially the 13th highest graded offensive player for the Volunteers in 2021. Offensive lineman they graded ahead of him that had consistent playing time, Cade Mays. You had J.J. Crawford, who didn't have much consistent playing time, but coming in right behind Javontez Spraggins was Darnell Wright. Of course, I put a lot more value in playing the tackle position than the guard position. That's just me. Cooper Mays, who was in and out of the lineup, came in a few spots behind him, but obviously he was dealing with injury. And then you had a rotating cast of characters, and Jackson Lampley and Ollie Lane and Jerome Carvin's in that mix. And Jerome Carvin played the entire season, don't get me wrong, but who kind of filled in there at left guard whenever Carvin was having to play center. So we'll get to those guys as we move on. But when we're talking offensive linemen, I like to reflect a little bit from the Pro Football Focus. So nonetheless, Javontez Spraggins coming back. He's one of four of returning five starting. He's one of the four returning of the five starting offensive linemen coming back for this season. He will be in there barring injury. But I think that for Tennessee to take that next step offensively, guys like Javontez Spraggins would really need to kind of take a step and really kind of mold his craft and continue to progress as a football player here in the Southeastern Conference. And now he's got 2 years of battle test under his belt, and he's, a true junior right now. Let's see the step that he can make. But that's who we're talking about here on our starter spotlight for the season 2021. We'll move on down the offensive line, and we'll discuss Cooper Mays at center coming up tomorrow. Josh Ward, former co-host of, was Will West, but Josh Ward coming up next here. Will West is one of my guys in the morning, and so sometimes I get a little cross-brain whenever I'm talking about shows. We're going to have Josh Ward coming up here in segment number 2. He'll stop by for his weekly chat, his Ward Wednesday chat. That's coming up next here on the show. Built Bar Mud Pie. Not sure about mud pie. Not sure what it might taste like. Well, if you're a chocolate fan, you better sit down for this. The new mud pie bar, which is whipped cream and chocolate mousse, smothered in 100% real chocolate and topped with cookies and cream crumble. You've got to try the mud pie as soon as possible. And you need to hurry because the mud pie par and mud pie puff are only available for a limited time. Visit built.com to taste all this deliciousness for yourself. Are you not convinced just yet? Luckily, we saved the best for last. It's actually really good for you. No, really. All Built products are low in calories, high in protein, and low in sugar. Mud pie is packed with 16 grams of protein, only 150 calories, and 8 grams of sugar. It's like your mom baked this most delicious creamy chocolate mud pie wrapped up just for you. Like all Built bars, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and tasty, and you can check it out all at Built.com. Use that promo code LOCK15 when you're there, and you're going to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off. That is all at Built.com. One live NBA draft show is just not enough here at Locked On Vols, so the entire NBA channel is going live on the NBA draft night coming up tomorrow. If you have your favorite NBA team, make sure to subscribe to them on the Locked On channel, YouTube channel, so you can get notified when they go live for NBA draft night. Just coming. We're just days away, folks. NBA draft. We'll have to see, of course, where Kennedy Chandler goes and the rest of the potential lottery or first round picks. All right. It is Ward Wednesday time, so we'll bring on our buddy, our friend, our colleague, Josh Ward. Josh, things are not much going on right now. Pretty calm on Rocky Top, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. Water's always remained calm in Knoxville. Over the last few months, there's been a lot of positivity. Last couple of weeks, things have gotten a little choppier out there on the waters, but they always move.
I mean, I hope you think of this of me, and if not, then you of all people who I respect and one of my mentors in the business, I hope you call me out on it. But I feel like I speak my mind. I feel like I'm very unbiased. I feel like I'm not afraid to shy away from the truth or my opinions. But the last 24 hours since Carnell Tate decided to go to Ohio State over Tennessee, I've been kind of trying to reel in some Tennessee fans. The sky is not falling. I mean, that mentality is just hysterical to me. This class will absolutely finish top 15 in the country no matter what. I mean, sure, yesterday or a Monday, it was not a good recruiting game, not just because Carnell Tate went to Ohio State, but because you're losing some momentum with some other targets, and there's still work to be done. But I don't understand the sky is falling mentality. I mean, pump your brakes. You still have a 5-star quarterback, a top 10 nationally ranked prospect in this class. And so I guess the attacks on the coaching staff, I don't quite get. I know it's frustration because you missed out on Carnell Tate, but I mean, goodness gracious, the last couple of days, man, it's been wild.
I would agree with all of that, and I would absolutely agree that attacks on the coaching staff and acting like the sky is falling and the program has no chance to succeed in the future would be an embarrassing overreaction.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's good news that Carnell Tate chose Ohio State over Tennessee. Of course it's not. And he is a replaceable player in the class, but there's a reason he was such a high priority for the coaching staff, and that other players are as well. Let's see how things play out with other players. I think line of scrimmage is most important in this class. I also, at the wide receiver position, to go back there, I have a lot of confidence in this coaching staff being able to have success offensively, no matter who they end up signing in this class. But we are talking about what kind of potential can you find as a program. I think it comes back to, what are your expectations? What are your expectations short term in terms of where this class will be? Like, Eric, if fans are expecting a top 5 class, then you're probably setting yourself up for disappointment. Top 10 is very possible. Top 15, I think, should be the lowest acceptable spot. If at the end of this cycle, Tennessee is ranked outside the top 15, then things will have gone very badly from what the coaches are trying to accomplish, let alone what fans are hoping for, recruiting analysts might be saying. But there's a long way to go, and Tennessee is still in a good position with other important players in this class. You need to go land them. But if Tennessee wants to compete for championships in the future, Tennessee does need to land players like Carnell Tate from a talent standpoint.
Yeah, and it's obviously disappointing. Carnell Tate's a top 5 player, ranked nationally number 1 at his position. The relationship, and I think the outrage is stemming from, Carnell liked Tennessee. Tennessee was in the driver's seat there for a bit. Now, Ohio State was always there. They didn't just come swoop in out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Carnell Tate has liked Ohio State's. There's a lot to like about that program, not only from where they're competing right now for college football playoff berths, but their ability to translate guys into first-round draft picks. Brian Harline, former NFL player, would be his position coach. There's a lot to like over there. So, but I think the frustration lies from, Tennessee was in it. Tennessee had as good a chance as Ohio State. It didn't come down to it. They just kind of lost them. But when you look at this wide receiver board now and recruiting for the class of 2023, Nathan Laycock's the guy that Tennessee's in on. I think Malik Benson, who's the top-ranked wide receiver in the JUCO ranks, he came on an official visit a couple weeks ago. Really like Tennessee, but is going to have to survive Alabama and Georgia, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not huge on the wide receiver class right now. I'm not huge on the running back class whatsoever. And that's from a national perspective. Like, Roderick Robinson's a guy that I think Tennessee really, really liked. But obviously, Trayon Webb's stock has gone down. We'll see what happens with Jeremiah Cobb. They brought in Will Stallings, who I think is a nice player, and we'll see what happens in the future. Deshaun Bishop might be a part of this class. I think the frustration might be you have this offense and you're missing out on some playmakers to come around and help Nico right now.
Yeah, and I'll still say at that position, I'm okay with what Tennessee will be able to do because of the coaching staff. And, I like Justin Williams-Thomas, who's a rising freshman. He's here for the spring and I think can be a nice player for Tennessee over the next few years. I think Tennessee needs to go get some heavy hitters up front on the offensive line at tackle, on the defensive line, guys that can make a difference, because that is, to me, ultimately why Georgia won a national championship last year and why Alabama year in, year out, and LSU has been so good. Now, look, if you can go score 48 to 50 points, then you can allow some slack on the defensive side. Alabama and LSU have been able to hit that point. Maybe Tennessee can, but then that kind of comes back to, well, those teams had a bunch of first rounders, and that's why you do want to recruit at the highest level at those skilled positions. But if Tennessee's going to be in that 38 to 42 point per game range, that gives them a chance to compete just about every Saturday. And I think that's where Tennessee can be. But defensively, they have to get a lot better. And they need, this past year's class, I like the additions of James Pierce and Joshua Joseph and Tyree West. And by the way, those were late additions. That's a reminder of, well, it's June. We'll be talking about this in July. That's not the end of the recruiting cycle. If you can close with those level players and some more highly touted players like Caleb Herring, who's already a part of the class, that to me is what's going to give Tennessee a chance to get where it ultimately hopes to go in the next couple of years. That has to be the top priority.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There is a long way to go. We had no idea who James Pierce was, Caleb Webb was, Justin Williams-Thomas was this time last year, Tyree West. I mean, those players were the three of the four I just mentioned were secured on National Signing Day. And so
those guys were all committed elsewhere this time a year ago, or during the cycle at least. Tyree West was committed elsewhere. Justin Williams was going to West Virginia. Caleb Webb was East Carolina, correct? And then his profile rose. Tennessee did a good job of getting in there. But this time a year ago, those guys weren't. Not only were they not talking about Tennessee, they were talking about other schools where they planned to go. So that's also a reminder of you keep recruiting other players. Boards will open up. Last year, Tennessee was in a different position than the year before, where it was the school having to go through a coaching change. Last year, Tennessee was trying to take advantage of those kinds of positions. So there are players who are not on the board right now, or at least not being talked about as much. They're on the recruiting radar of these coaching staffs. But Tennessee will have a better chance as the fall goes along. And by the way, need to go win some games, need to continue to progress as a program, because that will be a part of this conversation. But that's still a couple of months away, which I totally get.
Yeah, no doubt. And so the sky is not falling. Okay, the world is not ending. But in the same sense, you do need to continue on with the trail. You need to hold on to Christian Collier, who, Kentucky's gaining a whole lot of momentum for right now. Tennessee will have him in officially this weekend. Big Francis, the offensive tackle, Tennessee will have in officially. A couple of guys on the defensive side of the football you need to go ahead and close up here in the coming weeks. John Slaughter, Jeremiah Telander will be in here. Jalen Smith, the linebacker. So the sky's not falling, but you still got some work to do, and there's a long time coming between now and National Signing Day. Again, I'm not trying to, carry water or anything. I don't understand that mentality that we saw yesterday. It's the minority, and we talked about this. But moving on real quick.
Well, Eric, and I'll add quickly. I do think part of it is as well for some fans. It's kind of a reminder of, okay, maybe this isn't going to happen as quickly as I hoped. And you've been riding the positive wave of Tennessee basketball had a really good season, disappointing tournament finish, but a really good season, won the SEC tournament. Tennessee baseball, terrific season, disappointing finish, but won 2 championships in the season. And I think there's the hope that that's the carryover for football. Maybe they surprise us, but I think Carnell Tate choosing Ohio State was a reminder of, okay, we're still not there. We're not at Ohio State's level. We're not at Georgia's level, which should be an obvious statement, right? Georgia just won the national title. Ohio State competes at that level. But it was a reminder that, these guys like us. Tate likes us. CJ Allen, talked positively, but then immediately turned around and committed to Georgia. So
and he was always going to Georgia.
Totally. So while it's an obvious statement to say, Tennessee's not there, to get that kind of reminder, and hey, NIL is only going to be able to do so much for you. I think that's probably part of the frustration of, okay, I have to reset my clock, which fans don't want to do. Fans don't want to hear, well, you got to be patient. It's going to take a few more years. While that may be reality, they're probably tired of us telling them that.
Yeah, and I get that. And one more note on CJ Allen as well. He was always going to Georgia. And so I've had some people reach out to me and say, well, why waste an official visit? Which is valid. That is valid. But I mean, Tennessee's going to shoot their shot, right? Tennessee's going to shoot their shot with Aiden Mazzell, who I think is a lock for Florida, in my opinion. You still got to shoot your shot. You still got to.
Yeah. What if a relationship there sours with one of those guys in the school that they end up committing to? If it's not Tennessee, you keep those doors open because the recruitment does not end with a commitment most of the time.
And also, nobody wants to hear this right now, but it's the era we're living in too. I mean, hell, you're not recruiting for 2 years down the line, but that transfer portal, it's open. And you go into a situation you don't like, you're going to think back on who you liked during the initial recruiting process, and Tennessee might be a front runner there. Last thing, Josh, I know we got to get you out the door here. This is very much a lazy summer topic, but we are in the middle of June and things are slow, so I will ask this question. Okay. What, in your opinion, is the most important game on Tennessee's football schedule right now?
Well, it's Ball State, first game. You gotta come out of the gate strong. I'm kidding.
You're making fun of me because I said that 2 years ago. We were at Rusty
Yeah.
Wallace Honda, and I said West Virginia is the most important game. You said, well, that's coach talk, Eric. You're not in this radio business too far. You'll learn to not say that anymore.
The next game is the most important game, Eric Kane. I think it's the Florida game. I think that for several reasons. One, it's an important game for the standings. You're going to compete with Florida talent-wise. I think there are a lot of similarities between the two programs. It's year 2 for Josh Heupel, year 1 for Billy Napier. If Florida comes to Knoxville and wins, that's no good. I don't know if the rivalry is going to stay when they start changing the schedules in the SEC, but right now it's an important rivalry. Tennessee just hasn't won it very much, and the last few years have actually been kind of ugly by the time the fourth quarter ended. So for those reasons, I would say that. And then also where it is in the schedule, it's early, of course. You have LSU 2 weeks later coming up. Let's say you get a win against Pitt, because I do think that's a game Tennessee should win, certainly can win on the road. If you beat Pitt and then come home and get a win against Florida, your fan base is rocking. This recruiting conversation that we're having, you go back out and say, hey, look at us. We are doing what we said we're going to do. We're ahead of Florida. We are making a move, and then you see how things play out from there. On the flip side, you lose to Florida. That Sunday and Monday afterward is ugly. Fans are asking, okay, at home, first-year coach at Florida, they come to our place and win. I hate the when are we going to, but fans are going to ask, rightfully so, when are we going to beat this team? Because it never happens. So I just think it's so important for the positive and the negative that you can avoid if you beat the Gators in late September.
Josh Ward Wednesday, every single week right here on Locked On Vols. The host along with Jason Swain, VFL. Josh and Swain, noon to 3 o'clock Eastern time, every single weekday on 99.1 The Sports Animal. Josh, what's coming up today and the rest of the week on Josh and Swain?
Yeah, like you mentioned, it is the middle of June, so the summer talk, we are doing a lot of look ahead to the fall. We are doing a lot of, okay, here's what's happening in the recruiting world. So trying to add perspective as best we can from 12 to 3 every weekday on the Sports Animal.
As best we can. That's all we can ask. All right, Josh, appreciate it, man.
You got it. Thank you.
All right, Josh Ward. Follow him on Twitter at Josh_Ward each and every day. Appreciate him for stopping by the show. We'll come back and tie a bow on this edition of Locked On Vols here in just a second. Great stuff there from Josh Ward, as always. We continue on here with this edition of Locked On Vols. Guys, got a very special treat coming up later in the week. If you're a fan of Tennessee football, trust me, you will want to tune in to tomorrow's show. I promise you that. So set your timers. Make sure, I don't want to give anything away, but make sure you tune in for tomorrow's show. You're going to want to listen to that. Also, I don't tease it because sometimes interviews fall through, and I don't want to tease that and not deliver. But I'm just saying, set your timers, set your alarms for tomorrow's show. Hey, been teasing it all show long a little bit here. Did it in the cold open as well. I want to ask you guys this. What is the most important game on Tennessee's schedule here for 2022? I put it to Twitter, and we talked about it Tuesday morning on the starting lineup, Tyler Robbins and myself. And I said, hey, most important game on Tennessee's schedule in 2022. About 500 votes in at the time of this recording. Overwhelming at 86%. The answer is Florida. I gave the options of Florida, LSU, Kentucky, and other. 86% of people who answered my poll question at _Kaner said Florida. 6% said LSU. 6% said Kentucky, and 2% said other. Always a Volin. I voted UF because of the streak. You got to get over this bump. Even if it's a down year for Florida, next I'd say put away LSU. I think a win there and Pitt would mean the program is continuing its upward trajectory. Kentucky is an easy dub, no sweat, just trolling any Kentucky listeners. Blake says, I'm with Ivans. That was my co-host on Tuesday morning because he said Florida as well. 5-0 going, or he said LSU actually. 5-0 going into the most winnable Alabama game in years would be absolutely incredible. 9-3 would be great. Pull the upset against Bama and win the games you're supposed to win and ended up 11-1. Watch Bama play Georgia in the SEC championship game. Not impossible, although I do think 9-3 is more likely. Interesting stuff there from Blake. We'll go to Stan. I went with Pitt because it's the first big game on the schedule. I need to go 4-0 in non-conference, and if you look back at last year, it was a missed opportunity. No doubt about it, Stan. We will go on to DeBrutes. It has to be Florida. The next big game is Florida. The next big game is always the most important game. Wilson County Vol, same as last season. It's Pittsburgh. Big time swing game. Get that dub, and 8-4 is very possible. Get beat, and winning 6 or 7 could be tough sledding. Matt says, I know a lot of people will pick Florida, and rightfully so, but we are better than them and should win that game this year 8 out of 10 times at home. Kentucky is the more important one in terms of standings, man. I love that answer. I truly, truly do. But my one rebuke is until you beat Florida, I'm not going to believe you're going to beat Florida, right? I mean, goodness gracious, how many times in the last 10 years it's been a team? And Florida's had some good teams there. Don't get me wrong. But both of these programs have been down at points in times the last 10 years. Tennessee more so than Florida. And Tennessee had every reason to win those games, and Tennessee did not, right? So we'll get into that here in just a moment when I continue to give you my answer. Mark says Pitt. Robbie says, come on, bro. It's always Florida. Tyler says Pittsburgh. Great participation. You guys can always chime in at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. Who is the most, or what is the most important game on Tennessee's schedule for 2022? I'll tell you my answer right now. And with regards to all the answers, and I'll kind of go down there, game by game almost, or the ones that we've at least mentioned. But my answer is Florida. It's got to be Florida. And I understand that's low-hanging fruit. I understand that's a rivalry game. I understand it's in the first month of the season. I understand it's the first SEC game. I understand it's the first SEC home game. I understand the streak. I understand all that nonsense. But point remains, and a lot of you guys pointed this out, I mean, goodness gracious, you're a better football team than Florida. You are better than Florida. Florida's not going to be as bad as everybody thinks it. And I, the national plaudits really are giving Florida the benefit of the doubt because a lot of times Florida gets the benefit of the doubt. But you've got a returning quarterback that's going to be playing in the NFL one day. You've got a good coach. There's still talent on that roster. We've talked about this, right? But this will be a regrouping year, a regrouping year, however you want to phrase it. You are a better football team than Florida. You are further along in your rebuild than Florida is. Win this football game. I mean, freaking win this football game. There's no excuse. Win this football game. If you don't beat Florida this year, I mean, seriously, when's it going to happen? That's my question. When will it happen? So I'm not ever going to assume a win against Florida. I agree with some of you guys saying, well, Tennessee's the better team. Tennessee should win that one. I agree, should. But I've seen Florida pull games out of their butt too many times and beat Tennessee, right? I'm not going to assume a win ever against Florida. I'm just not going to. So if you beat Florida, say you take care of business against Pittsburgh like you should. And I know I keep assuming a win against Pittsburgh, and I shouldn't do that. But I do truly believe Pittsburgh is a much obviously you won double-digit games, had a Heisman Trophy winner. You're at quarterback. You're going to take a step back. You lost a Blitnikoff Award winner at wide receiver. You're going to take a step back just naturally. But you do have Keaton Slovis. You do have some other, talented players there. Pittsburgh's not going to be a pushover by any stretch of the imagination, but Tennessee should win that game. What some of you guys have said about Florida in the comments is how I think about Pittsburgh, right? And maybe both of us are wrong for thinking that, but that should be a win. But say you take care of business against Pittsburgh. Say you beat Florida like you should and you need to. Tennessee is 4-0, 1-0 in the SEC, heading into the off week for a chance to regroup and get ready for a game at LSU and then back home against Alabama. I mean, think about it. You're in a good spot. That game at LSU is going to be tough. But if you head into the off week 4-0, building on that momentum, getting healthy, getting your game plan right to head down to LSU to take on another team that is starting over with a first-year head coach in LSU, much like Florida, but even more so, in my opinion, so much talent and a much better football coach. That's going to be more of a challenge, and plus that's going to be on the road. So my vote is Florida. My backup vote would be, and I understand the LSU arguments, my backup vote would be Kentucky, 100%. You know why? Because Kentucky that game will determine, in my opinion, who finishes behind Georgia in the SEC East, okay? Kentucky is a solid football team. Mark Stoops has, and as much as you guys hate to hear this, because I know Tennessee fans love to troll and pick on the little brother, which is Vanderbilt and Kentucky, and that's fair. Stats don't lie. Stats never lie. But Mark Stoops has built a solid football team. Never are they going to be flashy. Never will they win the SEC. They just won't. They're just not going to win the SEC. But by golly, they're going to contend to win 8-9 games every single year. They're going to play good defense. They're going to be great at the line of scrimmage. They're going to run the football. And it's not going to be sexy, but they are going to be a solid football team. And I think they'll take a small step back, but they're still going to be good this year, returning the leading rusher in the SEC in Chris Rodriguez, returning Will Levis, who I think is a pretty decent quarterback, returning some players on the offensive line and in the defensive line in the front seven. Whoever wins that game finishes second behind Georgia in the SEC East, in my opinion. But also, you need that game because a worst case scenario, you'll go 2-2 in league play in the month of October. Remember, October 8th, you're at LSU. That's going to be a tough game. Say you lose that one. Say you lose Alabama the next week. You're starting October 0-2. You'll beat UT Martin. You need Kentucky to win that to break 500 on the month. All right, so my backup game would be Kentucky. Let's talk about LSU real quick. A lot of people saying going into LSU, what it would mean to win that game on the road, signature win. I completely understand. I just, compared to the other two games, I don't think it's even a conversation in terms of which one's more important. That'd be a big one. Don't get me wrong. It'd be huge. A lot of people are saying, well, what if you beat Pittsburgh? What if you beat Florida? What if you go down to LSU, win that game, and you are 5-0 heading into that Alabama game? Woo! Yeah, that'd be huge. Tennessee would be a top 10 team if that were to happen. But I think you need to take a step before you start to walk. I think you need to walk before you run. That's kind of how I view the schedule. So, I'm not putting it out of the realm of possibility, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. If it is, Tennessee, it'll be a top 10 showdown of two top 10 teams for sure heading into Alabama. Finally, I'll talk about the Pittsburgh game real quick. That will be the first true test on the season. Ball State won't be anything. Going to Pittsburgh, 3:30 game. It's on ABC. You're going to get going up against a quarterback that's no slouch, Keaton Slovis. But for much reasons, as I've already pointed out, I do think that they are going to take a step back. So you should handle business. And I understand a lot of people saying, hey, that's the first test. That's the first swing game on the schedule. You need to, that's the most important. I get it for sure. And I understand that argument. I just think that Tennessee should win that football game. So which one is the most important game on the schedule for Tennessee in 2022? Would love to hear from you guys. I'll bring some more of this onto the show tomorrow. If you guys chime in at _Caner, at Locked On Vols, at Caner on Air on Facebook, and of course, fill up those comment sections on YouTube. What is the most important game coming up for Tennessee in 2022? That'll do it here for this edition. Big thanks to Josh Ward for stopping by. Guys, don't forget, you're going to want to tune in to tomorrow's edition, Thursday's edition of Locked On Vols. I promise you that. That's coming up tomorrow. The first picks of the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft have been made. Search now for the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and get over 50 insiders, the Odyssey Sports experts, the draft experts of Locked On NBA Big Board. The 5-episode Ultimate NBA Mock Draft is underway right now. Make Ultimate NBA Mock Draft your second listen, right behind Locked On Vols, which is your first listen today and every single day. As always, thank you guys so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen. Subscribe, rate, fill those comment sections, a thumbs up, throw me a heart, all that type of stuff on YouTube. Write me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Those negative reviews, those negative Nancy's, we gotta swarm them down, guys. We gotta give compliments to the show here. I need your help with that. Thank you so much. And hey, why don't we do it again tomorrow, guys? I'll talk to you on a Thursday. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everybody.